how do we do this? How do we get here? Well, in those days, Idaho had one champion, and he was pretty much the champion for all 10 provinces, states, and territories of Penware. And he was passionate. And he was mad because Matt Morrison would not let him have a full front of the stage chance to address the full Penware group. Well, we've come a long way, baby. But now what we need in every state and every legislative session, it starts over again. Somebody's got to fight it. Somebody's got to prove the case. Some guy's got to believe it, or some gal. And we have some good gals. So without much further ado, you need to, if there's anybody, and I know, Travis Kiesik has come along. We're getting some pretty good traction out of Saskatchewan now. We've had some good traction before, some eager beaver guys trying to work it, but they couldn't get the traction out of the rest of the legislature. We've had trouble getting traction out of the Canadian federal government. We got, and I'll say we, Matt Morrison and I and a few more Penware guys, we wrote the legislation at the federal level to get federal money, matching money, to help the states. We spend $1, we get $1. It's changed. I think this year we get 60 cents on $1, but they have a bunch of other drainages thrown into the mix, makes it a little tougher. Find yourself a champion if you don't have one. And if you're here from British Columbia, please talk to Paul Choi and feel free to tell him that I threw his name out here. He may not be the champion, but I think he'll help you find one. And that's really critical. At least one guy, and preferably 2 or 3, that will work if you get one like Mary Dye, one is enough. She's unstoppable, whatever in the hell she goes after. But that's all I want to say. Thank you for the interest. Thank you guys for keeping this ball turning. Keep pushing it along. It's worse than ever. Saskatchewan has a definite hit. It would not surprise me that if they might have a few more water bodies, that there's a problem, because it's been right on the border with Manitoba for years. But Saskatchewan definitely has a hit. That's one step closer to Montana. 2 years ago, North Dakota and Wyoming, or there was one down in Colorado, and then Boise. It's getting closer and closer to Montana. Boise's making I think a champion effort at if they get rid of those, it'll be nothing less than amazing. If it's not already down the Columbia River someplace, it'll be amazing. But I don't think it's been found, has it? And I think people are looking. So anyway, also the golden mussels coming in. You can't let your guard down any damn which way. So with that, thank you guys. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. It's my passion. 6 months from now, I'm out of the legislature. Montana will have another champion. We've got a couple of them lined up. Thank you.
Thank you for that opening, Senator Cuff. And we've accomplished so much over the past 20 years together. There's so much more to do. There's new threats on the horizon. And sir, we wouldn't be here without your leadership and helping champion this forward. So appreciate that call to action. Next, we're going to have Senator Van Burtenshaw give a few opening words as co-chair.
Hello, everyone. I realize it's been a long day. I'm Van Burtenshaw. I'm from Idaho, southeast Idaho, and near the area where we have been affected in the mid-state. I've been serving in the legislature for 12 years. I remember the first resource meeting that I had. I sat down by a colleague and he says, "Hey, look at this." And he handed me a piece of legislation, and he was asking for $200,000 to fight the quagga mussel issues. And he lived right on Bear Lake, which half of the lake is in Utah and half the lake is in Idaho. And after I read the legislation, he says, what do you think? And I said, you didn't ask for enough money. He wanted 200,000. I said, at least 2 million. And I didn't even know the scope of the problem. I didn't know hardly anything about quagga mussels, but I've had a real education since. We are committed to eradicate quagga mussel in the mid-snake if we can contain it. We've reduced it from 7.2 miles to 3.5 miles. We test excessively, not only in that stretch of the river, but all stretches of the river. And when we found this problem, we did about 1,300 to 1,400 tests a year on every body of water or stream in the state of Idaho. Since that time, we're doing about 4,000 tests a year and over 450 just in the mid-snake where we have the problem. And so with that, I don't know that you need more than that, but just know that I'm really committed. We've been really aggressive in the state of Idaho. We put on probably the most aggressive campaign against the quagga mussel and as any state in the state of Idaho or in the United States. And with that, I'll end.
So we've got a great agenda for you today. Last year, the Pacific Northwest Economic Region passed a resolution calling on regional action to prevent and protect our waters. Ultimately, we want to start with some basics for anyone new, not familiar with this issue. We want to get you familiar. We want to show you what all the Pinward jurisdictions did to execute that resolution, provide an update on invasive mussels, and then move into some new threats on the horizon with some really great speakers talking about golden mussels and a unique threat that's now facing our jurisdictions. Martina?
Great. Thank you, Justin, and good afternoon. And thank you again for making here. I know it's at the end of a long day and lots of information, so we're going to continue to share more information. And so we're going to do a very quick fly through to kind of give a bit of a very high level 101. When we refer to invasive mussels, what are we talking about? So we're talking about invasive freshwater mussel. We're going to talk about how that's shifting a little bit with the golden mussel, but these are primarily freshwater mussels. They are known to be one of the most prolific invaders. They can spread easily and rapidly at all life stages. Some of these key elements include their ability to survive out of water up to 30 days. They have the ability to attach onto solid surfaces, and they don't differentiate between different types of, whether it's recreational boats, infrastructure, essentially anything that's coming into contact with water where there's mussels present in that system, they can potentially attach onto it. And then that ability to survive out of water means that they can easily be transported. So we know that overland movement of boats is a primary vector for their spread from one lake to another. But we know that different transport corridors can be different ways that these boats can be moved. They have a microscopic larval stage that can survive for up to 30 days in small amounts of water. So that's where we start bringing in things like ballast water as different mechanisms for their transport. Traditionally, over the last sort of 2 decades, when we've been referring to invasive mussels, we've been referring to traditionally the zebra and quagga mussel. But as of October of 2024, a third species, the golden mussel, has now come forward as a new species. It was first introduced to North America and California in 2024, thought to be introduced via the shipping corridor. So this is where we're seeing transcontinental movement across our international waters. And so while we have been largely focused on that overland movement of boats, the emergence of the golden mussel in the last 2 years is really shifting our thinking to now have to think about additional species and corridors in which they can move. We're hearing lots over, I think, this summit about the importance of trade and improving those corridors and sharing trade. Unfortunately, what can come with that is the movement, unintentional, unintended consequence of movement of aquatic invasive species such as these mussels. And so a big piece is preventing that from occurring. The golden mussel is one that is not only expanding the horizon of how they can move, but also looking at different ways that they can interact in the environment. These are some photos. We're going to be hearing firsthand how California is seeing this kind of shaping up on their landscape just over the last 2 years in terms of how this species is establishing in different infrastructure there. Noting that this picture, I think I have a laser. This here is highlighting that marine corridor that I mentioned. So they originate from Asia, thought to have been introduced first into the port of Stockton in California. But what really has come to light is that from the port of Stockton, we have this marine highway that can move between our marine ports. So not only the overland movement of mussels, but now we're looking at this sort of marine corridor as another mechanism that they can potentially spread. All these red points here show all the detections of the golden mussel in California since October of 2024. So we don't yet have a detection outside of the state of California of the golden mussel, but we're going to hear firsthand from our colleagues in Oregon about how they have had our first interceptions of that overland movement. This map, I think, speaks to how we're seeing that overland movement occurring, and then just touching on how we're seeing that level of infestation occurring just over less than a 2-year period of the golden mussel in the infrastructure there. So there's lots on the horizon that we need to be thinking about, and Penmore gives a great opportunity to talk about how we can work together across these different sectors and areas. Another piece of note with the golden mussel that is very front and center is, mention these different corridors, but also they take the abilities of the zebra and quagga mussel to survive and establish, and they take it to a next level. Their ability to survive in different conditions is far wider than that of the zebra and quagga mussels. They can survive in broader calcium levels, so they require actually far less calcium. And what we're seeing is an intersect into the marine environment, and that they have the ability to survive in more levels of salinity than our traditional freshwater mussels. So this starts expanding where they could survive once they're introduced. So some of the areas that are known to be higher risk for zebra and quagga mussels, that is now starting to expand as we're seeing, looking at those different areas for the golden mussel as well. So this just kind of shows we're seeing, just gives a sense of that expansion of the zebra and quagga mussel across North America since the mid-1980s. And of course, we're unfortunately seeing that spread come further west. And so how do we work across our Pacific Northwest region to try to maintain that sort of perimeter line of defense to hopefully not see further expansion as we see these emerging corridors and pathways coming forward? And particularly, of course, what we want to highlight here today is what are some of those linkages from an economic risk perspective? And I'll pass it over to you, Justin.
All right. Well, if you thought quagga and zebra mussels were bad for the Northwest, certainly I think is illuminating this additional threat. It's compounding the problem. There's new pathways. We face new risks. What is fully certain is the economic risk and the impacts that invasive mussels of all types would pose if introduced to the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. Penmore has been a leader in looking at this issue for a very long time. You can see in 2015, the economic study was done looking at the annual mitigation costs to hydroelectric facilities. That's $500 million annually. In the state of Washington, it's $100 million annually. We did this through an independent study of our own. Just to draw the connection between quagga and zebra mussels and golden mussels are invasive in Brazil, where they're impacting the hydroelectric sector. And in Brazil, they did a study looking at the revenue loss of those impacts. And ultimately, Brazil is losing $150 million a year in lost energy production. So when we say that we face a new threat that's like quagga and zebra mussels, this is very true on the economic scale as well. Different jurisdictions have done their own studies looking more holistically at the potential impacts. One of the things that we know is the impacts to the hydroelectric sector are likely the same level of impacts and have those same operation and maintenance costs looking at other raw water sectors, whether it's fish hatcheries, fish passage infrastructure, agricultural irrigation systems, navigational locks, and legacy data centers. Ultimately, any raw water system faces similar risks and is likely facing a similar cost. So while we often say $500 million is the risk, it's probably 5 to 10-fold that, if not more. So we need to think about this issue across the Pacific Northwestern region. This is really the value of this group and the value of this organization. We face a similar threat. Thinking about who we are as a people in the Northwest, so much of our sense of place, who we are as a people, the way that we make a living, the way we interact with the environment, with our families, with our children, the way that we create our economies are related to water. And this is a direct threat in so many different ways to that water that we rely on. You can see here just a snapshot of the different impacts, but you can see that tourism and recreation, for example, $30 million in BC. It's reasonable to assume that these impacts shown here within that specific jurisdiction are relatively similar to those other jurisdictions within the Pacific Northwest. We share a lot of commonalities, so it's likely that these costs are the same. We talked a little bit about the situation in Idaho, and one of the things that I think we need to stress is there's the new kid on the block, the new threat that may be worse, bigger and badder than them all, the golden mussel. We can't forget about the other threats to our economy and our natural resources. We can't forget about quagga and zebra mussels. Ultimately, really have to commend the state of Idaho for the great job they did responding to the Snake River population. They've really set the bar for all the other jurisdictions within the region to follow in terms of multi-agency coordination, rapid response, communications. Really, really did a great job. And I think it's a good lesson for all of us as we face these threats in our own jurisdictions. We need to move quickly. And I think we learned about that from our friends in Idaho. And I hope that we carry that forward across the basin. Martina, I'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, so in terms of emerging detections, how we're seeing that line changing here on the Canadian side of particular very recent relevance, front and center, I think for many of us, is a new detection that just came forward earlier this month, positive confirmed detection of a zebra mussel in Lake of the Prairies. So this is a shared water body between Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And so those detections come forward on the Manitoba side of the shared reservoir, and immediately Saskatchewan and Manitoba stood up a joint response and are working together along with Fisheries and Oceans Canada in a coordinated response with an immediate focus on monitoring and looking at potential containment options. And I think, seeing that immediate shared joint response being stood up is a benefit of the relationships that we have across these networks, and working together to help strengthen our collective response efforts. But of course, this is going to be something that we're all going to be watching very closely. But, really the relationships built within these rooms, and, very much, I think this brings forward an important piece that, we all know that the movement of water and the movement of species don't respect those jurisdictional boundaries. And so the more we work together, we can see examples of where we can really benefit from working together, and lessons learned from other jurisdictions like Idaho to strengthen our collective efforts across the region.
Thank you. Yeah, folks, my name's Keith DeHart. I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator at Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I've just been asked to give you a brief update of the situation we have going on in Oregon. If you are not aware, as of June 22nd is when we went public with it, but on June 6th, we detected a single adult dead quagga mussel on the shoreline of Prineville Reservoir, out of the water and in the sand. This is probably the best possible scenario for a detection because it was out of the water, in the sand, unattached, and dead. However, the Prineville Reservoir in Central Oregon, it's very near the geographic center of Oregon, actually, far away from all of our border protection stations, is one of our high risk for establishment and introduction of invasive freshwater mussels in Oregon, one that we are very concerned about. And so as a result of this detection, we instituted our invasive freshwater rapid response plan over the past few weeks and over the past month, basically, and have since not found any further evidence of a population in the reservoir or any of the surrounding reservoirs in Central Oregon. However, we are doing ongoing monitoring and stepping up our efforts in the area, increasing our allocation of resources to the area to see if we can find the source of this potential infestation. And so at this point, we are considering Prineville Reservoir still inconclusive. However, we are taking the threat very seriously, and it just goes to show that it's very real. They are moving around, they are present, and we need to stay vigilant in our prevention efforts for moving them around.
Thank you, Keith. So what's being done, and really what is that regional approach? And the Pacific Northwest Economic Region plays a huge part in this effort, kind of that overarching policy and leadership role. But there are a variety of other partners working together to address the same challenge. And while we face some uncertain situations and some unforeseen threats, what is certain are those negative economic and environmental and social consequences. So I think it's really this call to action to maintain our resolve to increase prevention efforts, as well as maintain readiness and improve readiness for some of these problems on the horizon. We do this through so many different forums, sharing information, policy development, sharing information on watercraft inspection networks, as well as monitoring at an operational level. But really, this is such a great place for that overarching policy and leadership forum. And one of the things that was really proud to be a very small part of last year was developing a Pacific Northwest Economic Region Aquatic Invasive Species resolution that was passed by the Penwar Board. Ultimately, this makes a commitment of all the jurisdictions to making aquatic invasive species a top priority, to urging governments to continue to prioritize and strengthen prevention as well as rapid response, and really work together to continue doing and building on those efforts we've been working on for the past 20 years. So this is really kind of a call to action to maintain our resolve in challenging times. What does that look like? In the past year, we've done so much across the Pacific Northwest Economic Region to take that resolution and put it into action. In the state of Washington, we partnered with the Pacific Northwest Economic Region to hold a statewide summit. Ultimately, that helped position our state to make really great decisions in increasing funding to our state lead agency, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and other partners to build and increase our own prevention within our own jurisdiction. And that really is an outcome of this effort. After that, we brought together the state of Oregon as well as the state of Washington to talk about the shared waters of the Columbia River that are so unique. That effort, bringing together all the different partners to feed into it, many of you are in the room, was culminated in findings and action recommendations for both jurisdictions. And in the state of Oregon, for example, that led both to policy bills as well as enhanced funding for Oregon. We also have the Pacific Northwest Economic Region March 2026 Saskatchewan Summit. Maybe raise your hand if you were a part of that or participated. It'd be interesting to know. Number of you. And so ultimately, I think the call to action is within our own jurisdictions or across jurisdictions to work together collaboratively to move ourselves toward where we want to be in that resolution. And then most recently, across Montana, Idaho, Washington, and British Columbia, in the sub-basin, the Pend Oreille sub-basin, the Columbia River, we brought together partners to hold a forum just specifically on that sub-basin. And it's going to be really exciting to see what comes out of that. One of the things was bringing together utilities within that sub-basin to answer shared questions about mitigation systems and other things that will be exciting to bring to you in the future. So the goals for this session is to highlight the work that we've been doing. We need to celebrate that. What Senator Cuff said really resonated with me. We've done so much. It's taken a mammoth amount of effort to get here. However, there's more to do. And ultimately, one of the things on the horizon is, number one, thinking about golden mussels. How does this change the game? And number two, speaking for the state of Washington, Representative Mary Dye specifically in our legislature has challenged us to think about a situation where these mussels become infested and we can't get rid of them. What does that mean? Are there engineering solutions, planning exercises, and things we need to start thinking about? If those take 5 to 10 years and cost millions of dollars, perhaps we should start talking about it today. And so that's really the premise of the conversation today, and look forward to diving right in. To panel one, talking about golden mussels and emerging threat pathways. We've got some really great speakers, one of which is Keith DeHart, speaking a little bit more about the imminent threat that we face. And then we have two different invited guests from the state of California, Dr. Lassie Danjavishar with Valley Water, as well as Samuel Blue with Alvin Edison Water Storage District, two jurisdictions in California that are actually dealing with the consequences of golden mussels. And I think it's really going to scare us a lot. And I hope it starts a good conversation about how do we adapt? How do we maintain and potentially increase our preventative efforts? Because this is going to get costly fast. With that, over to you, Keith. Do you have slides or?
Yeah, I think you'll pull up slides.
Okay.
I'll just speak.
Do a quick intro.
I'll speak. Speak.
Martina.
Yeah. Is this mic on? To detect. Oh, now the mic is on. To detect and intercept golden mussels outside of the state of California. And really briefly on this intro slide, I do want to thank the Alberta Invasive Species Council for this photo. I've been using it since the golden mussel situation has arisen. I shamelessly pilfered it off the website. So thank you for that. Next slide. There we go. We've already heard this, but invasive freshwater mussels, including golden mussels, have a host of threats. They will affect us biologically with food web disruptions. They affect recreation. They affect infrastructure, including hydroelectric systems, irrigation, and all any raw water systems. And then overall, all of that costs money. I think that we've heard that and we all agree, so I'm not going to belabor that point. We saw an animated photo or shot of this map to show you how scary the movement of invasive freshwater mussels is. Since the 1980s, we've been watching them slowly traipse across the United States, despite all of our best efforts. We are doing a very good job preventing introductions across the United States, but they are still moving. As is in the famous movie Jurassic Park, life finds a way. It makes it happen. And we are no less at risk with the golden mussel. We are probably more at risk with the golden mussel. And you can see on this map, I just put a couple of big red crayon marks effectively showing that we have this detection in the Sacramento River Delta. It is moving through the California aqueduct system. There is very little to do to contain it there. It is hard to contain, and California is doing their best to manage and mitigate against the effects of it in their aqueduct system. However, the threat is real, and they are moving. I also want to just highlight, as Justin and Martina already did, the threat of ballast water moving from the Port of Stockton to the Columbia River estuary, to Coos Bay, and up into Washington and their ports is a very real concern, and one that we should be on the lookout for and addressing. However, that's not what they asked me to talk to you about today. So, off my soapbox. Oregon has a robust watercraft inspection station that is a program that has been in place for 15 or so years. We have our watercraft inspection stations positioned around the state at major points of entry. You can see the heat map on this. It comes from a tool that has been developed in the Western Regional Panel called the SPOT tool that shows us where boater traffic is being hauled across our states and through our state road systems. And so we can use that to help us position our inspection stations at the highest value locations. And we can see that we already have in Oregon, for the most part, our inspection stations positioned where the most boater traffic moves across our state. In Central Point on the southern Oregon border at I-5 this last year on April 4th, we found this vessel. This vessel is a tri-hull pontoon barge that was purchased from an unknowing person in the Mid-Willamette Valley. He would remain anonymous, and I understand that. He purchased it sight unseen because it was such a good deal, located in the Sacramento River area. Bought it online, hired a watercraft transporter to bring it up to him, and that commercial transporter, commercial hauler, did the right thing and pulled into our watercraft inspection station in Ashland, Oregon. At which point, my inspector's jaws dropped. They have never seen anything this bad or this encrusted. This was what you can see here in that top left photo is a close-up of the intersection from the bunks to the watercraft and just the line of golden mussels that are present in there. It was encrusted across the entire hull on the engine and in the engine compartment. And our inspectors performed a decontamination on site per our normal protocols. We removed approximately 2.5 gallons of mussels off this vessel, and that's just what they could vacuum up off of the asphalt after they performed the inspection. You can see another thing that is interesting. I included this photo in the bottom left for you of the boat fender. It is not common for us to actually find invasive mussels on the accessories of a boat. But we know, and we are all trained in the watercraft inspection program to inspect accessories. However, this is the first time these inspectors had ever found one. And they were present on the fender and on the ropes within the vessel in storage. The threat is real. They are moving. We have it on good authority that Lake Tahoe has intercepted 5 to date within the state of California. We have also in Oregon seen yet another one. On July 4th, this last major holiday weekend, we intercepted this vessel in the same location, Ashland point of entry. And this 18-foot Thunderjet was intercepted with, this time, only 3 golden mussels that we could find. This vessel had recently been in the water in the Sacramento River Delta, so the viability of these mussels had a high likelihood. However, we did not and do not need to test for viability in Oregon due to our rules and laws. But we performed an inspection, issued the dry time, and sent this person on their way after a full decontamination. The major point, and I'm just going to be brief about this, is the threat is real. They're moved. We need to remain vigilant. And what is amazing, as we have heard already, is that we do have the infrastructure in place. These inspection stations were not stood up as a result of the golden mussel detection. However, they are helping us stop the movement of them. And so with that, I just want to thank you for hearing me out and allowing me to take the time to share with you a few of these scary photos. And I'll turn it back over to Justin.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Keith. And while we're getting the slides pulled up for Lassie, want to mention that this was the first occurrence of golden mussels being intercepted outside of California, and ultimately many jurisdictions took swift action to prohibit the species, and state of Washington being one. Within a week, we had done an emergency rulemaking to prohibit golden mussels, treating them just like quagga and zebra mussels, and I believe all the other PNWR jurisdictions treat them the same way. So really, it's a similar threat we're addressing the same way. So next up, we have Dr. Lassie Danishvar with Valley Water, and we're going to get an idea of what's going on in California, and then we're going to be speaking a little bit about what the impacts are and what we can expect. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So we can maybe move on to the next slide. Perfect. Following the first North American detection of golden mussel, California moved quickly to organize a coordinated statewide response. In 2025, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, or CDFW, established the Golden Mussel Response Framework, as well as several task force teams focused on prevention, monitoring, outreach, partner engagement, and science and capacity building. CDFW also developed plans to hire additional staff to support local agency through expanded monitoring, including in-kind eDNA analysis, provide watercraft inspection and decontamination training for local agency and private service provider, and expand the public outreach campaign. To support the implementation of this effort, Assembly Bill 149, which was passed in September 2025, appropriated $20 million to CDFW. However, the funding was only transferred to the department a few weeks ago. CDFW is now beginning to hire staff and implement many of the response efforts I just described. Next slide, please. Another key part of California response has been protecting critical infrastructure. The California Department of Water Resources, or DWR, manages the State Water Project, which delivers water to approximately 27 million Californians and 750,000 acres of farmland. In 2025, DWR established the Golden Mussel Strike Team, bringing together a multidisciplinary team to develop mitigation strategies. DWR also established a mobile mussel laboratory that used infested delta water to evaluate the effectiveness of potential treatment technology, including UV, hot water, and chemical treatments such as chlorine, copper-based product, and potassium chloride or potash. Just a few weeks ago, DWR established the Golden Mussel Invasion Incident Command Team, providing dedicated resources, improving coordination, and accelerating multiple response efforts. One important lesson is that infrastructure protection shouldn't begin after mussel arrive. Conducting vulnerability assessments early allows agency to make informed engineering decisions and implement mitigation strategies before facilities are affected. Next slide, please. DWR is now implementing many of the mitigation strategies identified through this vulnerability assessment. Current efforts include installing UV system to protect small diameter pipelines at the pumping plants, conducting chemical treatment, increasing inspection and maintenance, and developing facility-specific treatment plans. One important point to keep in mind is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. The most appropriate mitigation strategy depends on factors such as water quality, environmental constraint, infrastructure design, and operational objective. For example, copper-based treatment may not be appropriate where there are concerns about impacts to native aquatic species. Likewise, chlorine can be an effective option for systems supplied with low organic content, such as Colorado River, but it may not be suitable for the delta water where higher organic carbon increases the potential for disinfection byproduct formations. Next slide, please. California's response has also been supported by legislative efforts. Because of time, I won't cover every bill, but I would like to highlight a few key examples. Assembly Bill 149 added all invasive mussel, including golden mussel, to California's list of restricted species, and also allocated some funding to CDFW, as I mentioned in my first slide. In addition, the bill allocated another $20 million in grant funding available to local agencies to address invasive species issue. The golden mussel is among them. Assembly Bill 1772, if passed, would establish more consistent statewide watercraft inspection protocols and encourage agencies to transition to the watercraft inspection and decontamination database, improving information sharing and coordination across jurisdictions. At the federal level, the Golden Mussel Eradication and Control Act of 2026 was introduced by 2 California senators. If it passes, this would authorize up to $15 million annually through fiscal 2030 for golden mussel prevention, monitoring, and control efforts. One challenge is that most available funding is directed towards prevention for non-infested water bodies, while relatively little funding is available to help water agency and to protect and retrofit critical infrastructure already at risk. Despite the growing impacts of invasion, the governor of California has not declared a statewide emergency for golden mussel. However, a few counties experiencing widespread infestation have declared local emergencies. Next slide, please. So now I would like to briefly share Valley Water's response to golden mussel discovery. Valley Water serves Santa Clara County in Northern California, about 50 miles south of San Francisco. We manage 10 reservoirs, 3 drinking water treatment plants, 3 pump stations, more than 130 miles of pipelines, and nearly 300 acres of groundwater recharge ponds. Approximately 70% of our water supply is imported through the State Water Project from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta and San Luis Reservoir, both of which are now infested with golden mussels. Next slide, please. Yeah. Fortunately, we weren't starting from the scratch. Following the discovery of zebra mussels in San Justo Reservoir in San Benito County, Northern California in 2008, which is the only known zebra mussel infestation in California, Valley Water established an invasive mussel prevention program. Building on that foundation, we have expanded our response in several areas. We have enhanced our monitoring using eDNA, microscopy, and settlement plates. We have strengthened our vessel inspection program by updating our quarantine requirements and eliminated reciprocal banding within Santa Clara County. We use both human and canine for inspection. A side note here that per CDFW guidelines, canines are considered a supplemental screening tool, not a replacement for humans. We also launched a golden mussel public outreach campaign. If you're interested, feel free to scan the QR code to learn more about our program. We completed system-wide vulnerability assessment in 2025 and are now implementing several mitigation measures, including UV installations at critical pumping facilities. We are also developing a golden mussel control plan, which is required under California regulations once an agency becomes infested. The control plan is intended to provide a site-specific strategy for containing the infestation, minimizing its spread, protecting infrastructure, and guiding long-term monitoring and response. Next slide, please. So I would like to close with a few key lessons from California's experience and the strategies we believe are essential moving forward. First and foremost, prevention is the most effective tool we have. Once golden mussels become established in a water body, eradication is extremely difficult. That's why preventing their spread, particularly through watercraft inspection and decontamination, must remain the highest priority. To date, golden mussel have only been detected in water bodies connected or hydrologically connected to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, and there is no evidence of overland spread through recreational boating or fishing. We have a critical window of opportunity to keep uninfested water bodies free of golden mussel. Second, build a strong regional partnership and share monitoring data, protocols, and lesson learned across jurisdictions. Third, secure legislative support and sustain funding to strengthen monitoring, response capacity, research, and innovation. Fourth, conduct vulnerability assessment and evaluate mitigation strategies before mussels impact critical infrastructures. And finally, develop preparedness and response plans before an infestation occurs. Waiting until mussels are established is far more costly and challenging than preparing in advance. Organizations like PENWAR can play a critical role in these efforts by fostering collaboration across the states, federal agency, and water managers, promoting consistent prevention strategy and information sharing, supporting coordinated policy development, and advocating for sustained investment in invasive species prevention and infrastructure protections. Thank you for providing the opportunity for me to speak about golden mussel and some of the challenges we went through.
Great. Well, thank you, Doctor. That was fantastic. And we're running short on time, so we're going to roll the panels together and have Q&A for everyone at the end. So appreciate our first panelist joining that. The next person we have is Samuel Blue with Arvin Edison Water Storage District to kind of build off what you heard from Dr. Dane Vishar, providing their perspective. Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Samuel Blue. I'm the resource manager for Arvin Edison Water Storage District. I'm going to go through just a little bit of a district background about our district, and then I'll discuss how we managed this golden mussel infestation that we experienced this last year. There's a QR code on here. It'll take you to a YouTube video that'll give you like a fly through of our district if you're interested to get a little bit more information about our district. So next slide, please. Okay, so Arvin Edison is located in the southeast San Joaquin Valley in Kern County in California. We were organized in 1942, part of the Central Valley Project, and we started deliveries in 1966. We serve about 132,000 acres. 100,000 of that is irrigated crops. Our main surface water supply is from the United States Bureau of Reclamation, and one of those sources is from the Delta in California. We have 45 miles of line canals, 170 miles of pipeline, a pressure pipeline, 50 pumping plants, and our contract is about 350,000 acre feet. That's what's contracted. Doesn't mean that's what we get. And we have about 80 groundwater wells. Next slide, please. Okay, so we do an annual winter maintenance in our district about November and December every year. We opened up our system in December 2024. Everything looked great. We couldn't see anything. It was, golden mussel wasn't even on our radar, didn't even know anything about it. We opened up our system in December 2025 and we found an infestation of golden mussels in our district. It was actually quite alarming. You can see some pictures here on the left, just golden mussels attaching to anything and everything. Here in the middle, this is a 27-inch pipeline lined with golden mussels. And then on the right, it looks like it's a ladder rung inside of one of our stand tanks. And just keep in mind that this is 6 months of growth. We were able to track the water back of when we started taking water from the Delta that year. And this is 6 months of just growth of golden mussels in the district, which is quite alarming. Next slide, please. So just some more pictures. You can see on the left a ladder rung. In the middle picture here, you can see the ladder in the background there, just covered in mussels. In the center there, that is a cathodic cathodic anode for protection of the stand tank. It's encrusted with mussels. And then just to give you an example of what our stand tank looks like, so you see the picture on the right. We have about 39 of those stand tanks in our district. Next slide, please. So we presented this information to our district board of directors a few weeks after we found this, and it was quite alarming. They were concerned, and they pretty much said, "We are going to figure this out. We're going to solve this, and we're going to try and do our best to mitigate this issue." So what we came up with was a two-phase approach. Phase one being a large system-wide clean out to basically clean out the system and get as many adult mussels as possible, followed up by phase two, which would consist of a long-term treatment. The initial treatment cost $3 million. That was treatment for 30 days. And as part of monitoring, we established 15 settling plates throughout our district that we'll be monitoring continuously to check for growth of mussels. Next slide. So the product we applied was called Natrix CA. It's a copper-based product. The goal was to kill or control 90% or greater of adult mussels, plus all of larval and juvenile stages. Treatment began March 9th. Like I said, it was 30 days. It cost us $3 million. One of the injection sites was our main pumping station. It's called the Forest Frick Pump Plant. It's about 1,000 CFS that it can pump. It's the main heartbeat of our district. It moves all of the water that comes into our district. And then we also had 11 other injection points along our main canal. And the water that was pulled from the canal was then distributed to our farmers and distributed through the pipelines to carry that product out to kill the mussels. We treated 11,000 acre feet in this treatment application period. One of the difficult things is that we had to make sure that copper concentration was reaching to the end of our system. So it took quite a bit of sampling. We took, I think, over 1,700 samples during this time period. It was a 24/7 operation. We had to constantly monitor the concentration of copper, adjust the dosing to make sure we weren't going over, make sure we weren't going under to hit the target that we were looking for. And then we verified the results through visual. We had cages that we placed throughout the district to monitor the death rate of the mussels, and all the cages that we put in the district, all the mussels in those cages died. We did beaker studies as well in our office, and then we also put a remote operating vehicle in one of our stand tanks after treatment to confirm all the mussels had died. Next slide, please. Here's just some pictures real quick of treatment in action. You can see this is our DeForest pump plant on the left. You can see the large pumps and motors in the background there. The totes full of the product being injected. The picture on the right, we had a boom that crossed our main canal in front of the forebay of our pump station where we inject the majority of the product. Next slide. And here are the results of what we saw. The picture on the left, this is just a sample of what we saw. This is dead mussels that came out of a farmer's turnout, just massive piles of dead mussels everywhere. On the right, we have traveling water screens throughout our district that collect moss, trash, debris before it goes into our pumped distribution system. And these traveling water screens were just constantly collecting dead mussels out of the canal. Next slide. This is kind of a scary picture. This is a pump that we pulled from one of our forebays that would pump water and boost it uphill to our farmers. The picture on the left, you can see it laying on a flatbed truck. The picture on the right is the mussel after it was just pulled. You could see it's kind of gross, but those are all dead mussels on there that had just fully encrusted the outside of that pump. The outside of the pump, not really a concern when mussels start getting inside the pump, inside the system, inside of our control equipment, inside of the pipelines. It can really mess things up, and that was the big concern about why we pushed so hard to get this done. Okay, next slide. So what we need from policymakers, like Lassie said, policymakers are moving, but it's not fast enough. And a lot of the money, a lot of the focus has been on prevention, which is great, but California is, and for us, we're kind of almost past that in some areas that are not affected yet. Yes, prevention is great, but a lot of places prevention it's too late. It's already here. So what we really need is we need the governor to declare an emergency so that district and counties can start moving quickly, streamline permitting, make funding available. The district paid for this treatment all ourselves. And so far, no state dollars have been provided to anyone for treatment costs at all. And so also, golden mussels, they threaten everyone, federal, state, and provincial. So it's going to be a team-wide effort right now. Yes, it's in California, but it's most likely going to spread, unfortunately. And as much collaboration as possible will be best. That's the end of my presentation. I had just a few minutes to go through it, but any questions later, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, thank you for that. And you probably can't see it, but I think the room is shocked. And, I think that, we're a little bit over on time and we're gonna have to make some changes to the agenda, but this really is that call to action to maintain our regional resolve to prevent this problem and also increase our readiness. I think the message is we don't want to be in this situation. Mr. Crossland, I apologize. We're going to have to transition into panel 2, but we'll ask you to speak at that time due to the timing. One of the things that we really wanted to spotlight is Representative Mary Dye from the Washington State Legislature kind of putting this challenge into perspective, as well as that call to action for how we maintain our resolve and how we think about the time when we will have to deal with these species in our waters. Representative Dye? Yeah, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you could put that in the presentation view, that'd be helpful. Thank you. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I want to frame it from the policy standpoint and how a policymaker thinks about a challenge like this. When the Oregon inspectors stopped that boat on I-5 carrying 5 live golden mussels, you have to realize what had happened, that mussel took a ride across 2 states. And this inspection station, single inspection station, had 173 watercraft come through that inspection station, and 108 of them were at that one single crossing in Ashland. Not one of these 5 golden mussels arrived by ship, ocean-going ship. They came over land on trailers up the interstate, which means the vector is not the river. It is not the ocean. The vector is us. So our world is made up of networks of interdependencies. Everyone lives in a watershed. All the land drains somewhere. And what sustains us geologically, geographically, commercially, politically, legally is interconnected, but the network is not easily visible. So we have governed as though it were not there. And those of us in advocacy and political class, the consultants, they are all part of the problem. We take a side, we deploy tactics of zero-sum game. We're rooted in a worldview of extraction. Even when a win is obtained that way, the consequences propagate through the network and surface later as litigation, as clawback, as repeal by the next majority, as a community that spends 20 years refighting what was already approved. A networked conflict cannot be resolved, or cannot be won. It can only be resolved, and that requires a common goal. Until now, we've rarely had one. Enter the mussel. It carries no passport, it files no permit, it waits on no appropriation, and it has done what none of our institutions have managed on their own. It has given 10 jurisdictions a single shared adversary. Look at what's moving through the Columbia Basin. 259,000 square miles, the size of France, 7 states and Canada. 1/4 of the flow originates north of the border. And who holds it? 31 federal hydropower projects, 61 locally owned, 264 private, and this is not a portfolio. It's a network managed as 356 separate decisions. So what does common sense look like? Let's enlist the public as partners, not suspects. Let's add hot water stations and information kiosks at every vulnerable boat ramp. Prevention messaging in the big box stores where their families buy kayaks and paddleboards, because paddleboards in the back of a minivan is not on anyone's inspection list. At our staffed inspection stations, let's add restrooms and coffee stands. If we're going to delay someone, let us send them away as an ally rather than an obstacle. The cheapest inspector we have, or what we'll ever have, is the boater who cleans his own trailer. And let's close the gaps that we have left open. Decontamination for industrial equipment, barges, cranes, dredges, arranged through our public ports before it enters the Columbia or the Puget Sound or any water in this region, and permit the response before the detection. Pre-consult with the federal agencies, pre-decide how governments declare an emergency in shared water, and pre-position the compounds and the contracts. A villager does not wait for a public comment period. So what is not working? Hydropower here is already holding itself back. We spill for fish. We ramp down to let wind and solar on the grid and back up to cover them when they fall. That flexibility is the service as well as the essential electricity generation that we absolutely need across the entire region. Were it not for these constraints on our hydropower system, the capacity in the system across the entire watershed could provide up to 85% of our electrons needed. So a dam with mussels is not a shock absorber. It's just a wall. $500 million is what we're looking at just on the hydropower system before those facilities to keep in order to mitigate for an infestation on a facility. And the federal costs, and that doesn't include the irrigation systems, the drinking water, the hatcheries, the navigation locks. Now let's look at how we fund prevention. The federal cost share program pays 65% for inspection stations, but only pays 50% for planning, permitting, and rapid response. So it's a misalignment, because while prevention has been effective so far in this one last watershed, it cannot be held forever. And if we are not prepared in advance, our response will be too slow, Joe. It'll be exactly like letting the horse out of the barn and closing the gate after. So we discount the tourniquet and we charge for full freight for the surgery. And in the federal fiscal year 2025, that entire program was appropriated at zero. That year, the first golden mussel was found in North America. Zero. The mussel has united us, and the funding has not caught up with that unity. 1/4 of the water in our power system comes from Canada. There is no version of this where either nation solves it alone. That is the opportunity buried inside this emergency. It makes the network visible. The mussel moves as one system because the water is one system. It found every connection we had forgotten we shared. Norman Maclean wrote about the Blackfoot River in Montana. The water reaches Clark Fork, and Clark Fork reaches the Columbia. He was writing about this basin. And he wrote, and I would point to this slide, every single one of those orange marks on the river is a hydropower facility powering the prosperity of our two nations, our multiple states and provinces. This is what is at risk. Billions of dollars of our economy is at risk. Hundreds of billions of dollars of our shared economy is at risk. But when Norman Maclean wrote about our basin, he wrote this: eventually, all things merge into one, and a river runs through it. That is not a sentiment. For everyone in this room, it is the description of the system that we all are responsible for. Let's govern like it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Representative Dye. Some very powerful numbers and words. Really appreciate that. I think really paints an important picture of the collective efforts we need to put towards this issue. And so with that, again, in the interest of time, this I think just speaks to the importance and how much there is to talk about on this topic. Next, we're going to move to getting a little bit more of a close to home here in Alberta perspective. So welcoming Margo Jarvis Redelback, the Executive Director of the Alberta Irrigation Districts Association. Welcome, Margo.
Am I on? Good. Thanks very much, Martina. Recognizing that I think we are short on time and you want to have a couple of questions, I just want to say, Representative Dye, thank you very much for your presentation. You speak about cross-border water quite eloquently and the risks with that and aquatic invasive species. We saw golden mussels, 6 months worth of growth. Very concerning, and I would say that our irrigation districts here in Alberta are concerned. I see Roland out in the audience. He is a director with our largest irrigation district in Alberta, and their water is sourced on the US side of the border. So it goes back and forth both ways. Our districts, as I mentioned, take things seriously. We've been partnering with the government of Alberta for probably almost 20 years now. financial support, education and outreach support wherever we can. We're very pleased to put money towards the initial K9 program development in the province, which I think was exceptional for the education and outreach it provided for, at that time, a very new and emerging threat. We still do continue to work with the province, helping to monitor our high-risk reservoirs and our irrigation infrastructure, because we do know that we will face some significant costs. 2018 pest management report that identified treatment options with the one pesticide that we do have approved for use in Canada, and I would say is not copper sulfite. It's going to be upwards of $1.5 million annually, and operationally challenging to ensure that we have the concentration thresholds kept at a time frame within the infrastructure to treat for any mussels that could be growing in that infrastructure. So I think with that, I'll just maybe move it on to Serina.
Great, thank you. Yes, and next up we have Serina Swanson from FortisBC to bring a bit of a hydropower perspective from British Columbia. So over to you, Serina.
Okay, I'll also keep it quick. Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Serina Swanson. I am an environmental program lead with FortisBC, which delivers electricity and natural gas in British Columbia. We have about 1.3 million customers. I primarily work in the generation sector, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to give you a quick warning. This is going to be up here, high level, so come see me after if you have technical questions. So just to get some familiarity, I've just got an overview of our 4 hydroelectric facilities that we own and operate. We do operate 5 other facilities on behalf of other owners, but I'm not going to worry about that today. These facilities are all on the Kootenay River, and you can see they're very close together. I think it's about a 3 to 4 kilometer stretch. Thank you very much. So we're actually going to focus on the Crossland Dam here. So the Crossland Dam's our furthest upstream dam, so likely where we would first see an issue if there were to be an introduction of aquatic invasive species. And Kootenay Lake is just right above Crossland here, and that is a high risk area. Top right, that one. Oh, too far. Okay, so this is an overview of the Crossland Dam. So we did have a vulnerability assessment conducted in 2014 by R&T Consulting, who anyone in the mussel sector is probably very familiar with. Most people probably know that the primary systems that could be impacted are any systems with raw water intakes, which are most of them. So trash racks, cooling water systems, small diameter piping, screens with larger openings, all potentially can be impacted by invasive mussels. So what are we doing about it now that, hopefully before we have an introduction? So currently, thankfully, we're still at a monitoring and prevention stage. So we do have a number of mechanisms that we employ to try to prevent an introduction. First one I'm just going to mention quickly is our contractor and watercraft inspection program. So anyone coming to our facilities that is going to be using equipment within our waterways needs to follow our inspection decontamination procedure as it applies. And Martina and her team was actually kind enough to help me develop that so that we align with the province. We also have this bio box at Crossland, which some people are hopefully familiar. It's a fancy cooler, basically. So we have a raw water system from the dam that's going in. We have 3 substrate plates. Those first 2 plates we pull out every 6 to 8 weeks to inspect visually and tactily, because that's about how long it would take for the mussels to biofoul those plates. And the tactile piece, if you have a rough sandpaper-like feel that you cannot rub off, you may have mussels, and then we would employ an emergency response. The 3rd plate doesn't come out until we have our Regional Invasive Species Society come out and do scrape sampling to test for those microscopic villagers. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about, which I think most people here are interested in hearing, is the cost. So we did a class 5 estimate, which is a error range of minus 50% to plus 100%, which obviously very large range, but it's a start. Looked at 4 different options. Option 1 and 1A and 1B, UV treatment, the HOD UV treatment system. 1A is as is piping arrangement. 1B is actually rearranging our piping and employing UV to minimize the number of raw water intakes we have to treat. And then we did a 2A and 2B, but just with chlorine in the same type of system. So anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million in capital, and then anywhere from 25 to 90,000 in operations and maintenance costs times 4 facilities. This also doesn't include the O&M costs that would be incurred with all the things we would have to do mechanical treatment on, like trash racks and any systems that we can't treat with UV or chlorine. And I've got lots of other information, but I'm going to leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Serina. And really appreciate, we still have Jeremy Crossland on the line in the virtual world. Appreciate, Jeremy, your patience as we did a little bit of shifting of the agenda. So I do want to welcome Jeremy Crossland from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to give an update on their efforts. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you. Jeremy Crossland, Army Corps of Engineers. So we manage the Aquatic Plant Control Program, which is the cost share that several folks have referred to. We cost share with non-federal entities for prevention, control, rapid response, monitoring of aquatic invasive species. Everybody in this room, or I shouldn't say everybody, but the focus is invasive mussels. We don't discriminate between golden and quagga zebra. The language is pretty vague, and we can work on any of them. And in the interest of time, we've talked all about infrastructure and the impacts. I think the one thing we haven't talked about that I still have left in my notes is fish passage, which is another issue that we see coming for invasive mussels, right? We know it impacts water supply, whether it's irrigation, drinking water, hydropower. The Corps has projects that have the oldest infestations of zebra mussels, and we're still dealing with that and suffering the maintenance and O&M. But what we're starting to worry about is, especially with salmon and other places where we're working on fish passage, is how that's going to occur. And if we're still doing Q&A, I think that's the one thing nobody hit, and I'll be happy to answer questions. But otherwise, we'll just, if you guys want to get the questions, let's do that.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Crossland, and also thank you to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for administering that cost share program for many jurisdictions in the Pacific Northwest. It's covering 50 to 65% of our overall effort, and that's much appreciated. And also, we're grateful for the support of the Corps, but also from our congressional delegations for supporting that. It's really the backbone in a lot of ways of what we're doing to protect the whole region, and appreciate that. So first question, we'll move into questions for the audience, and let's do a blended panel. So if anyone has a response, feel free to raise your hand. Yeah, I think we'll start. I would think we'll shift. We have some sort of canned questions. I think in the interest of time, we'll just open it up to the audience. Yeah, sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is meant to be thought-provoking more than anything. What I'm hearing in the audience, in the panel, and the people that are online is ultimately the costs of this is horrific. We're not talking hundreds of millions, we're talking billions. The second thing I'm hearing is that we're focusing on mitigation, we're focusing on prevention. I want this to be thought-provoking. A number of years ago, I led a scientific team where we were interested in thiobacillus bacteria in an industrial setting. I put together scientists from Bamfield in Vancouver, from Harvard, from the University of Rochester, from the Marine Biological Laboratory, and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. My statement is this: it's inevitable. Whether we think it or not, all of our waterways are going to be contaminated in the next 5 to 10 years. What we need is arrows in the quiver to go ahead and find a way to eradicate these species once they take hold. If we put unquestioned resources in those skilled in the art, we are going to be delighted with what we can achieve. I point to the Gates Foundation. I can point to the scourge of mankind of malaria. Who would have thought that we could have simply developed the ability to sterilize the female Anopheles mosquito, and all of a sudden we're able to manage this? If we put resources and have a parallel effort to everything that we're doing here, but put effort into eradication once they take hold, put money into it in a 3 to 5 year window, we might be surprised that in fact we're able to measure and be able to manage this, as opposed to the horrible reactive circumstances facing billions of dollars. I just say that to be thought-provoking. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? I know we're about to get into the wrapping up stage. So with that, I think maybe we'll just look for opportunity for any closing comments from our panel members.
Yeah, and you know, oh, go ahead. No.
Listen, this is the atom bomb of aquatic invasive species. We've dealt with this really aggressively. We have a Department of Ag that has attacked this issue. It's a big deal, and we spent about $9 million trying to eradicate quagga mussel in the Middle Snake. Our director of the Department of Ag says, listen, if we lose this section of the river, we lose the whole river. And we're talking the Snake River, the 8 dams before it hits the Columbia River. We have a lot of risk here. We have to do everything we can to prevent, and then we have to aggressively service the problem with the right chemicals. You'll have some feedback from environmentalists that we're killing too many fish, but I promise you, if it continues, it'll kill more fish than you could ever imagine. This is the disaster waiting to happen if we don't prevent and if we don't strike quickly. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And, you know, again, we last year created this resolution calling on prioritization, maintaining prevention, and increasing readiness for this impending emergency. And I think what was demonstrated by every speaker today is we still face that threat. In fact, the threat is increasing, and there's different approaches that are facing us. So really appreciate everyone's time, especially our colleagues from California sharing their experience and some of the risks that they're facing, and we wish you the best. Certainly a conversation that we can have about how this jurisdiction can help support what you're doing, and certainly wish you all the best in the future. And I hope to maintain those relationships and lessons learned. Martina?
Yeah, no, and I'll echo that and just maybe champion that if everyone can take away one key new learning from today and see how you can pass that on beyond this room and share that in particular over the next few days over the Penmore Summit are the ways that we can linkage to these other policy conversations. I know there's a water policy session happening tomorrow, so just be thinking about how we can apply this to some of the broader sectors. I see a hand in the room. James. Oh, yes. And in addition to that, there's a number of AIS-related invasive species booths out in the foyer, so I do really encourage you to visit those as well. There's lots more information there, and I believe if folks are around tomorrow morning, there will be maybe a little bit of a canine demonstration happening at breakfast, so I encourage you to come here bright and early with your coffees and enjoy that demonstration, and hope you enjoy the evening reception and look forward to continuing the conversations. Thank you.